Suren, over to you. You have a couple of minutes to introduce yourself. Let us know what you've been doing, and yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Bharath, and it's a privilege and honor to be here, sharing this with the Beckn Open Collective. I myself have been a volunteer with the BOC for the last 2 to 3 years, and it's spanned into a variety of use cases across domains, globally, and in various geographies, right? So thanks a lot for having me here. Just to give some context, I've spent last 11 years working on the problem of education, lifelong learning, and how that can enable livelihoods and many other opportunities. When I look at the world today from my lens, it's going through disruption. Every sector is getting, changed with the advent of AI and technology and so on. And hence, learning becomes an important skill for anyone to stay current in their jobs and keep moving forward in the career path. And that's what excites me and keeps me going.
Awesome. So now that that's out of the way, let's jump into our session for today. For the folks who are just joining in, please do leave your comments and questions on chat. We'll keep picking them up. Let's look at the education sector as a whole, just as a starting point for this conversation, right? You've been there for a while. You've seen the trends that have been bubbling up. What do you think is the positive trends that you've seen over the last few years?
Right. When I started working on education, one of the common things was 97% enrollment of students in schools, bunch of colleges where somebody can go after school, but the conversion rate from school to college was very low, and so on and so forth. And yet the schools being there, the learning outcomes were low, huge employment gap, and so on, right? But if you look at the past decade, India has experienced significant advancement, emerging as a growing force in the global knowledge economy. We've made significant progress in poverty elevation, which is one of the true measures of economic growth. And as per one of the report that I read recently, every minute, 30 people are rising above poverty line in India. As per the World Bank, India is no longer the poorest country in the world, which is something we used to be called a decade ago. So there is significant economic progress that we can see. Of course, you can see the rise of startups, which are offering learning and livelihood opportunities, buzzing around, trying to reach various corners and various sectors. The government has been aggressively pushing for upskilling and employment programs at scale with a fair usage of technology through the Digital Skill India portal. And the government also been pushing for entrepreneurship development a lot through the Udyam Aadhaar cards and so on. There are policy reforms like new education policy, which connects the whole school to higher education to livelihood and learning on the job sort of spectrum. So it's no longer a fragmented system. It's all unified learning livelihood ecosystem that's coming up even through policy pushes. And just to quote some numbers, the number of colleges in India rose by 400% since 2001. There are institutes that rank in the global top 350. Yet, there is so much more potential in India that is untapped, that can be sort of capitalized or brought forward. But yeah, India has made significant leaps and bounds of progress in the last decade.
Beautiful. And you clearly came prepared. Wow, great. But it's undeniable that we still haven't hit the mark. There seems to be challenges yet to be overcome. Could you show up some of the prominent ones, some of the ones that needs our immediate attention?
Yeah. I think the first and foremost we need to understand is that India is that unique opportunity of large demographic. More than a country, it's more like a continent with some 20-30 countries in it, and that diverse geography, demographic presents the unique digital dividend instead of digital divide, as we call it. So that's what we have as a unique opportunity. But when you go further deeper, right? So tier 2, tier 3 cities are brimming with talent. but they still face several challenges when it comes to skilling students and professionals. To start with, there is limited access to quality resources. There are gaps in technology and infrastructure and the relevant use of them to deliver quality education. There's lack of diverse industries and employment opportunities which suit the need of each and every one, which can increase participation of women in the workforce and so on. And these are all major issues for non-metro cities, right? There are still challenges to be solved, particularly around making it an inclusive and equitable sort of access to education and employment opportunities. Just to quote a few numbers, the global labor force participation stands at 47% for women and 72% for men. Yet in India, approximately 47% of graduates, about half of them, are not eligible for industry roles. So they end up doing some blue collar work, some sort of non-white collar work, right? So either blue collar or gray collar, some other work which is all manual laborers work they end up picking, which rises the service industry in India. While we have the largest working age population, yet the unemployment rate is about 7 to 8%. And that's pretty high when you look at 1.4 billion and 7% of that is a huge number. So hence, it's important we look at the whole spectrum of learning and livelihood as a whole, and see it from the earliest stages of years, like from cradle to grave, sort of a spectrum, and enable an individual to access better opportunities.
Great. So what I'm hearing is, while a few areas do have good access to opportunities, both in the education and the job sector, most of them either don't have that access, or even if they do, they're not employable, leading to further problems down the line, right? What have some of the strategies been to solve such issues in the market today?
Yeah, right. So I'll go back to what I was saying a while ago, right? There are startups buzzing, providing unique services like learn now, get placed, and pay later. There are not-for-profits and social entrepreneurs trying to reach deep pockets through their sort of missions. Of course, there's government which is trying to do massive upskilling and employment programs through the platform and the various partnerships that the government does. But each of these, right, across Samaj Sarkar Bazaar, have tried solving it in their own way. And it lacks substantial collaboration that could harness the complementarity and the collective strengths of each other. So we need more cohesive, synergistic approach, which unlocks the value for the end user. If you see it from the end user perspective, in spite of so much input going into the sector, the true value being delivered and realized is not yet solving the need of the end users. And hence, that's the gap to be filled, right? Bunch of things happening, but if they don't happen, or they're not happening in cohesion, in sort of collective spirit, they end up being piecemeal point solutions.
Right. So solutions exist in some certain silos, and while the inputs are great, it doesn't seem to be solving a large chunk of the problems that still continue to exist, right? To summarize the last sentence. Is there another approach that we should be looking at? And is someone really taking an action to go and find an unbeaten path?
Yeah. I think in the last 2-3 years, especially, and of course, it's not again in silos. It's been the rise of what is called digital public infrastructure in India, from the beginning of Aadhaar and then UPI and a bunch of other systems which are built and called as India Stack. But what's really becoming apparent in the last 2-3 years is this new way of digital economy, the new digital world, which we are now seeing, which is mirror of what the physical world looks like today, right? There are railroads in the physical world. There's a digital equivalent of that. And this is, again, not something new. We've all been using internet for a long time. A similar concept of open network, just like internet, being tried out and seeing some success through ONDC, through Nammayatri, through networks like Open Bellum network in Brazil. There is a network in Gambia which is being piloted. In the latest developments of EV charging and mobility, there is charging infra network also being piloted. So all these point towards the idea of an open network which can go one level deeper than platforms, and hence enable unification and interoperability of approaches across platforms, ultimately, unlocking the value for the end user. In essence, these networks enable access to knowledge, access to material, access to resources in a more fair, equitable, just manner for everyone. And then there's a similar effort called ONEST, ONEST without an H and with ONEST, which is Open Network for Education and Skilling Transformation, that, a collective of ONDC, EkStep, FIDE, and Protean, and few other organizations have taken on to champion this idea of open networks for learning and livelihood, and how that can unlock equitable access to opportunities for everyone. And I think that could be the way, as to how we could enable collective action towards this complex societal problem.
Awesome. The analogy to railroads was actually mind-blowing. And you're mentioning basically that ONEST is not really something new. It's just a collection and a set of people bringing together existing solutions and making them work together to solve the problems and distribute the solution of problems across a bunch of people, right? So let's track back a little bit. So if this were a movie, this is where a flashback would come, right? How did ONEST really come about? Give us the birth story of something like ONEST.
Yeah, so I think around end of 2021, around October 2021, a bunch of open source enthusiasts came together with a vision to imagine a decentralized skilling and education protocol, something that would enable exchange of value between multiple platforms, hence open up innovation and truly allow the market to reach the last mile, the next billion, as we say, or the Bharat, as it's called in the startup world. And from there, these sort of about 40 members or community with active participation from multiple organizations did some pilots, experiments. They wrote down, they adapted the Beckn protocol. So ONEST is leveraging the Beckn protocol at the core. It's an adaptation of Beckn called DSEP, which is Decentralized Skilling and Education Protocol. And they tried coming up with use cases like scholarship discovery, job opportunities, and so on. Somewhere this year, around Feb, March, there was also a hackathon which was conducted called Skillathon, where we saw 4,000 plus participants, 65 plus prototypes, and about 5 winners who were sort of won the hackathon, where they tried solving problems, coming up with innovative solutions, leveraging the protocol at the core of it. And I think that really gave the momentum and the belief that now this is a reality. This can be a reality. And around mid-July this year, we launched ONEST as a network, which is a manifestation of the underlying protocol. Around mid-October, we went live with few pilot transactions happening, which is application of scholarships that happened around mid-October. And now there is much more in the future that we can talk later in the webinar.
Awesome. It seems like a purely community-led effort and a very active participation from a lot of enthusiasts from the community, right? And hope this continues. But flash forwarding back, what's the response to ONEST like been from the market? What is the feedback that you've been getting from some of the participants that you've been talking to? How's the interest in joining something and adopting something like this as a regular business model?
Yeah. So ONEST today deals with about 4 major categories of sort of resources, which is discovery and access to work opportunities, can be job, gig, freelance, any of that. Discovery and access to financial support, which could be scholarships, government schemes, grants, and so on. Access to learning experiences can be courses, videos, boot camps, hackathons. All of these are learning experiences of various kinds. And finally, expert connect, where you could look at a mentor and so on. And I think this broad definition of ONEST really attracted close to 150 plus organizations that have expressed interest in enabling their businesses and their platforms through the ONEST network. About 10 plus organizations are in the process of going live by December or sort of early next year. Especially some of these organizations are focusing on blue collar workers, where we are seeing great interest right now. Overall, we as a community have come together a few times in an event called Win Room. Win Room is where everyone comes together, tries to solve a concrete sort of problem, and you don't walk out of the room till you win. That's why it's called Win Room. So you lock yourself in a room for 2 days, sort of like a hackathon, and you complete your network integration in those 2 days. So I think that's what we are seeing so far in terms of where the market and how it's responding to ONEST.
Beautiful. I mean, the win room ideas definitely seems to be something that's catching the eye of the people who seem to be interested, especially because it accelerates a lot of the work that gets in to join something like ONEST or an open network. But just give us a brief of what the experience has been like for these early participants, right? What have they been able to achieve? What's the process they follow to get in through the door?
Yeah. So, on the ONEST website, we have published a starter pack, which is sort of like a self-service entry point for anyone. Anyone could just read through the starter pack, get familiarized with what it means to join, what role can they play, what are potential values for them, as in what might they gain out of joining the network. And there is a technical guide with video playlists and so on and so forth to help them guide through it. And most people are reading that through getting on calls if required to clarify certain doubts and how to move forward. There is an active Discord community where people ask doubts, which again get clarified by community, but also there's an active sort of team members who are just waiting to support anyone who wants to go live. Much of these participants today are also gathering in smaller cohorts to form the early thoughts, because in the early days, when the network is about to kick off, much more transactions that will come in the future, it's important that each one who is going live sees an immediate value in going live, right? So it has to make sense for them as an organization to go live. So there are some of these workshops which are being facilitated, thematic workshops, cohort-based workshops, to help people first identify a larger problem, figure out what can they do towards solving the problem specifically right here, right now. And as people see that in the room, what each one of us can do, they start resonating first as a human network. So before people go onto the network, they need to first connect with each other as human network and see how I can give you certain value and get some value from you. And that really kicks off the process of people going live and sort of committing to their capacity and bandwidth towards this. That's been the early experience from how organizations have gone live. But we're seeing huge excitement. I think it's actually becoming the other way around, where sometimes we're unable to respond to so many queries and excitement that comes our way.
Fascinating and clearly very exciting times ahead, as well as more and more participants show their interest and start running through our doors, right? And for the guests who are listening in, all the resources that Suren just mentioned, the links to those resources will be shared with you either through the chat or through the post-event notifications, right? So please keep an eye out on our Discord channels. Please join the Discord channels that ONEST is also set up so that you're up to date on all of these things. Right. Let's move on. While we've talked about the what of ONEST and for a brief bit how someone would go live on ONEST. The most important question that the entrepreneurs are looking at is, why should I do something like this, right? So let's talk about that. What is it that open networks really unlock from a value perspective? And I like the way you phrased it initially, right? Samaj Sarkar Bazaar. Let's look at Bazaar first, because honestly, that's who will jump in first. So for the organizations and the network participants, so we call them, what is it that ONEST is unlocking, and how do they derive the benefit from it?
Correct. I would take an example before I sort of talk about few sort of values in general. Imagine if you're a course provider today, where you have a platform with a bunch of courses, and you see a drop-off rate on paid courses where people are not buying that through, and you're wondering, as a startup, how can I make more people take these courses? One way you could think is, what if we could provide financial support to these people so that the course becomes more affordable to them, right? But as a startup, are you in a capacity to launch a whole new business line of scholarships, financial support, or subsidizing the course in some way? Not necessarily, because that means you have to commit your operational capacity. It's launching a whole business line is much more complex. What Open Network does is it unbundles this value chain by, now imagine that same startup joining an open network where scholarships are available from some other platform. All they need to do is make them discoverable through their platform right next to the course, allow people to apply for the scholarships, and keep giving them regular status update if they get the scholarship. Through this, they will be able to retain the person on the course, on their platform, yet provide much more value to the same end user without taking the burden of the full business line on their head, because now the true value got unlocked by unbundling the whole process. Now, the reason why I took that example is because when I say in a more conceptual words that by joining open network you can offer a more breadth and depth of services, I think that the word breadth and depth does not do justice without an example. Right, and we saw something, but in essence, if I were to zoom out and just talk about why should a startup join an open network, they can offer adjacent services to what they don't do today. So somebody might just be doing a piece of learning and livelihood opportunity, but now being able to get all of this through open network, they can literally start creating career paths and learning paths for their audience, for their target group. Right, so that's one. Those who have a huge catalog of these services and products, sort of learning and scholarships and all that, they may not be able to reach out to all the audience in the deepest corners. By getting onto a network, they get a much wider, deeper reach, because now somebody will take it on their behalf. And there are innovative use cases like, there are people who do assisted service delivery on the ground, like, your sort of financial sort of insurance agents and so on. Now they can start also helping you fill scholarship applications, help you find the right courses for you to take, apply for the right jobs, find the jobs near you, etc., etc. So there are these models of complementarity and complementary strengths of each of the distribution networks, somebody's inventory, all of it coming together to unlock value for the end user. So in a sense, it allows each one to win at what they do. So instead of winner takes all, it is win-win for everyone. And I think that's sort of how I would sum it up. That you can innovate, you can go deep and wide. You can give flexibility to your audiences today, or you can reach out to wider and deeper audiences which you can't reach out today. That's how I look at startups benefiting from this. Yeah, and in one word, it's a new future on a shared economy, instead of a future on a monopolized economy. Yeah.
That's very well put, sir. And I think the highlights are the fact that solutioning becomes distributed and then combinatorial experiences grow just because you're able to access a wider user base without having to care about a lot of the headache that comes along with it, right? Great. Now, I do see a couple of questions that have come in through the chat, but we keep them coming in. We'll take them in a couple of minutes. I just want to finish the section before we get onto that. You did mention that there's a wider ecosystem of players around the network, right? It's more than just the participants who actively transact on the network. Who constitute this wider ecosystem? Are they tech? Are they non-tech? Is there a role that they have to play?
Yeah. So, today, the kind of platforms and solutions that we have may be catering to only a few top percentage of the population, right? And hence, when you think of reaching out to the next billion, sort of the Bharat that again the world calls it, you would think of how someone can interact in natural language, how someone could see something, sort of speak to it, so not just see it in their language but even speak to it and interact in more conversational manner. So translation of, say, courses could be a service, and then we're already seeing examples of people offering it. Speech enablement of your existing platforms. So how can you provide speech on top of your current products and services? How can you, like, there's this whole new excitement around chatbots and generative AI, and it truly can assist someone in their learning path, right? So how can you enable assistance through generative AI, through chatbot sort of conversational interfaces? Of course, these are some of the more exciting innovations that we see around. There are some basic fundamentals that are also required, such as if somebody wants to just plug and play onto the network, they need a way to store their content. They need a way to manage job applications. So if you are somebody who's just putting out jobs on your careers page, if you're getting onto network and you get much more inflow of applications, you would want to have a job application management flow, scholarship application management flow. So from provider side, these are some of the needs, and to solve for this, there are tech players, business players who are sort of putting their hand up to offer each one of these as enabling services, as accelerators, as innovations that again unbundle the value chain, allow the businesses to focus on growing businesses, growing usage, going deep and targeting adoption, while the tech is taken care of by the second layer of enablers and accelerators. That's what I'm seeing around. In fact, we're planning to have a workshop with TSPs in the coming few weeks to really brainstorm and see how some of them can start enabling much deeper innovation here.
Wonderful. And to the entrepreneurs on the call, it really means that you don't have to solve all the problems that are coming your way. You have a bunch of people who are willing to help you, and with a better skill set for a very focused problem that they're solving, which you can just adopt, right? And then speed up the way you sort of get onto the network. Great. So
Bharath, just to put one more thing, right? If you see across both the entrepreneurs and the sort of service providers, one thing that is key is that because the underlying protocol is same, which is, say, the Beckn protocol at the core, once you crack the puzzle of how to work around this, it's much easier for you to expand across sectors. So today, if you figure out how to do scholarships, tomorrow you can easily launch jobs and then e-commerce and grocery and whatever else you want to do, because at the core of it, it's the same protocol. And I think that is the key, that once you upskill your teams or crack the business model in one sector, you can expand much rapidly across these various domains. I think that's the true power of these networks and the protocol.
Perfect. I mean, a great point. But moving on from these two sort of bazaar players, what is it that the Samaj gets out of an open network? How do the end users, the consumers of the content, the suppliers of the scholarships and the job postings, how is it that they are benefiting from something like ONEST?
Yeah, I'll tackle this in two parts, right? So when you say Samaj, we also have to look at NGOs as a social entrepreneurs as one sector. And naturally, social entrepreneurs, because much of what they produce is either open or freely shareable. Courses are generally Creative Commons and open to share. The jobs they're trying to reach to the sort of masses, or the assisted delivery or agent-based models that they have. For example, Darshak has a agent-based delivery model. Each one of them are built with a societal lens, and hence the NGOs are much more open and need collective approach. Yet there is no underlying fabric which enables that co-creation of ecosystem, which enables that exchange of value. So there it's actually simpler, because by their business model, they are open to exchanging value with each other. Today, they might be struggling or doing, hacky one-on-one ways. Now an open network really opens up this co-creation and collective action for not-for-profits and social entrepreneurs. Coming to the end user, which I think is at the heart of all of this, right? That's what all of this is for. In essence, end users get more choice, more variety of products. They get ease of use without having to switch platforms. They get to access it in the shape and form or where they prefer to access it, whether it's through a WhatsApp bot, through a community service center, through an agent-based delivery, and so on. So it's actually equitable access to opportunities in my own way is how the user should perceive. But today the system is very fragmented, siloed, disconnected, right? And then has multiple frictions and entry barriers. Now, with the opening up of network, people will solve for those because it's in their interest to reach out to this audience. And that's how the end users would benefit, is how I see. There are a few examples, we can cover them later also, as to how there are some concrete examples of how people may benefit here.
Great. So I'll just take a couple of minutes to maybe look at a few questions that have popped in. We're about 35 minutes into the session. So guys, please do drop in any questions that you have. We'll keep picking them up. And then we have a section at the end where we'll just go through some of the questions that you've put in, right? The first one is from Nirant Ramkumuru. Is my understanding that ONEST is more geared for smaller players versus much larger players in the education space? Suren, your take?
Yeah, no, actually, no, right? What we have seen is the incumbents, which are larger players, naturally feel they may not need to join this, which is what I think even ONDC saw in the initial days, right? But if you look at the recent news, much of the big players are getting onto network because end of the day, the founding principles of an open network like ONEST or any other network is that it's a winner shares all model. It's trying to create a more equitable, interoperable, connected world. So it's an opportunity for everyone, not just small or big or for profit, not for profit. It is truly trying to open up the whole economic value exchange chain. So I don't think there is any bias towards it. Of course, in the initial days, it's the smaller, hungry players who get onto these new innovative ideas. That's just how market is, right? You always have early adopters, and there's a bell curve to how adoption happens and disruption happens.
Great. Thanks for getting that out. Next question from Arun Sadashivan. ONDC was more favorable for transactions of a clearly defined item. Example, money for ride in the case of Namayatri. His question is, how do you make sure that the quality of that a customer receives when something like a non-clear item, right, a service or a course is provided to a user? So it's about quality of the service provided.
Yeah, I think yeah, exactly. I'm trying to figure out that the quality of services is the question, because I don't think a course is a non-clear item. Like a course does have a defined curriculum, table of content. If you look at any course on the internet today, it does have clear articulation, whether it's a 4-week course, 6-week course, etc., etc. So it is a well-defined item, just like any other item. And I think the quality of service is governed in 2-3 ways. One, anyone who's joining network in the initial days. So it's not a truly permissionless network today. Anyone wanting to join the network does go through a compliance and sort of a go live readiness checklist. So there is some bit of, if I may say, auditing or reviewing that happens just to make sure that it's all kosher. There's no bad or harmful thing which is getting onto network, right? And over if you also look at the protocol, it does have provision for APIs which allow you to do updates, feedback, rating. There is an ODR, which is online dispute resolution network, also sort of as a horizontal capability also coming up. And at the same time, there are data points which allow you to measure the health of the network. So there are various ways in which quality of service can be measured and assured over time. Though I think in the initial days, and this question is very much relevant in the coming few months, but at this point, the people who are going live are truly going live with the excitement to crack a business model or a value unlock for the end user. Yeah, and then they're going through a go live checklist to make sure they are all kosher. Yeah.
Perfect. So we'll come back to the questions on chat in a bit. Let's get back on track with our regular scheduled program, right? You did mention that you had a couple of examples of a user benefit from transactions on ONEST. Is that something that you'd like to share now? Is there a story that you would like to present to our audience?
Yeah. I think the first one that happened on the network was an organization like Namayatri, which does auto rides today. Right? They had this very noble intention of helping the entrepreneurs. They call the auto drivers as the entrepreneurs, to helping their families access education, access to quality education. And they were keen to provide these scholarships to the entrepreneurs and then their families, their children. They were able to do that through ONEST because unlike the current domain which they operate in, which is mobility, they're able to quickly expand to scholarships, access them through the network, offer it to the drivers, help them apply, and so on. And I think so that Namayatri drivers, about 10, 15 of them getting the scholarship was the highlight for me in many ways, right? Like how an organization could innovate, how the end user could benefit, how all of it could happen so easily, a bit seamlessly. There are the current set of organizations who are working on going live in the next few weeks. They are talking about things like inclusion and expansion of women into work, and what they're talking about is not the women going to work, but the work going to home, right? How can discovery of work that a woman could do with their own flexibility at home or in the safety of their community without having to travel, maybe through a phone, sort of some sort of sales enablement, or open up a beauty parlor and so on. So there are various such inclusion related use cases which are going live, and I think they are very sort of deeply impactful. There are use cases about how gig workers can become nano entrepreneurs, how families of blue collar workers and those in the need could access and apply to scholarship through an assisted application model, because today scholarships do exist, but there's a huge disparity in who is able to access them because of the long application forms which are required, the language in which they are delivered, the platforms where they are present. With the unlocking of the provider side of scholarship and the seeker side, there are organizations who are taking these scholarships to the ground in the villages. So this assisted scholarship application, I think, is a great sort of anecdote and sort of anecdotal use case that we're seeing. And overall, what the current blue collar worker cohort which is going on is talking about how people can upskill and increase their sort of income and their chances of having a better career path. So yeah, these are some of the use cases in much more concreteness that we are seeing, which each one of them ring a bell very close to the heart. And then all thanks to the network participants and the community, which is making them go live.
Wonderful. I think it's heartening to see that such stories are emerging out of a very budding and nascent sort of network. And good luck to keep that continuing. So the next 5, maybe 7 minutes will be the last section of the prompts that I've sort of put together. So this is the cue to all the folks on the call to start dropping in your questions and start taking them up. But let's look at the future of what ONEST is driving towards, right? Given that this is such a wide spectrum of services, of people who will be benefiting from something like this. Is there a focus area that Honest wants to concentrate on now, maybe in the near future, so that they get some things right and then move forward?
Yeah. No, I think one, of course, Honest is an open network, right? So it's open for everyone to join. Yet where we are seeing clear signals of demand and traction are from the blue collar worker cohort that I was just mentioning about, because people see a white space, a gap that needs to be filled, can be filled. And there are, well-intentioned people who are willing to, and then these are all entrepreneurs running large startups, wanting to make that difference in the life of the blue collar workers, who they currently sort of employ or somehow engage with, right? So that's the first one that we're seeing. There are, the milestones in terms of this cohort is planning to go live by mid to end December. Maybe, enabling applications to scholarships and jobs and learning opportunities about anywhere between 1,000 to 10,000. People have planned pilots in various geographies with their audience. So that's the deep work which is going on right now in terms of blue collar worker cohort. We've seen equally amount of great interest from purple collar economy. And then folks on the call might have heard this before from Shanti's webinar on the purple economy, which is essentially people with persons with disabilities, right? That economy, or they, of course, need to be included in this effort. There's an opportunity and avenue for them to be upskilled, getting access to work opportunities which are suitable to them. Just like how I was mentioning about women being able to work from home, there are similar cases of people with disabilities being able to work with their own constraints. So that purple economy, I think, is the next big cohort that will be coming on. There's, of course, gray collar economy and there's white collar. So in a sense, it's open to everyone and anyone, but this is just the sort of the flow of events that I foresee coming in the next few weeks.
Beautiful. So 4 domains, which is essentially learning, scholarships, jobs, and mentorships across 4 sort of cohorts, which is blue, purple, gray, and white. That's a lot of work to be done. And well, while all of this is still going on, you've also mentioned that open networks are usually a rails to innovation. What are the innovations that we are looking at and seeing, or seeing interest, at least, from that ecosystem of people that we've been talking to already, at least in the Honest perspective?
Yeah, and I think there are innovations at various levels, right? There are innovations at processes and people level, like the assisted delivery model and so on that I spoke of. So there are business model innovations which are happening. There are more innovations at the content layer and sort of job layer, which is happening. For example, if you talk about a blue collar worker learning, you don't imagine them going through a course, sitting for hours or minutes to go through a course, get a certificate. They won't learn the way probably you and I learn, if at all we do. Right? So so when people are reimagining these through open network, learning is becoming more micro, contextual, just in time, relevant to what you are doing right now. And hence there is innovation around how content gets packaged and delivered. And then with Gen AI, content generation is much more easier. You could have bite-sized videos to help you upskill right when you are going to do something, right? You could have nudges that help you do the right thing. For example, a delivery agent just walking up to deliver the item could get a nudge saying, why don't you say good morning, good afternoon as you deliver the item, and so on. So there are people who are working on improving quality of services, safety, overall upskilling of, and then these, I would count all of these as innovation, because innovation is not just about technology, even people and content, and these are all innovations. The kind of work opportunities which are available, that's also becoming diverse and varied, right? Like people innovating models where how do you have, sort of homemakers make some extra earnings through working on the phone or doing a service for the community, maybe taking tuition classes or doing some beauty parlor and so on. So there are these business model innovations happening. Of course, there are tech innovations, for example, assisted application, not just through a person assisting me, but even through the bot, assisted discovery through Gen AI, speech-based accessibility, so that I can just talk and fill a form and not go through the full complex structure of the form, because some of us might be used to that structured form filling, but that's not natural to many more people that this open network is now trying to reach to. They are not used to seeing screens with forms, right? So all of that is how I think innovation is getting unlocked. Just yesterday, someone presented a prototype of, as I was saying, assisted application to scholarship and jobs. So there are people like the blue collar worker, some of them are innovating really well. That's how I see the future shaping up.
Exciting days ahead, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these in action on ONEST. So that's the end of the prompts that we've put down together. I'll open it up to the question answer session to the rest of the community as well. Please do keep dropping in your questions on chat. The question that I do have for you, Suren, is something that's very interesting. Nirant writes, owning the user is a very crucial part of a startup journey. And in an open network, users are not owned by the supplier and may give way to creation of a super player closest to the user. Is there a way to work around this?
Right. So I think the part of the question is right. I was just reading that as well on the screen. That yes, when you unbundle the value chain, there are seekers and providers, and it's the seeker who sort of captures the user, almost gets like a finder's fee if at all there is a commercial transaction. But for the provider, it's also a win-win, because now they're able to reach to a geography or to a seeker which they weren't able to reach earlier, right? At the same time, given an open network, the provider can also be seeker on the other side. It's not that you can only be the provider. In fact, most organizations who have a current set of products will end up unbundling their existing product into two parts, the provider part and the seeker part. And by doing that, the provider part is now connected to many more seekers, not just their own app or their own consumption interface. And the consumption interface that they have is now able to provide inventories or catalogs from many more providers. So I don't think there is any conflict of interest here or possibility of a super app happening, unless somebody goes and captures the whole market themselves and does not allow anyone else to enter, right? Sort of like if you say what WhatsApp did organically, it wasn't a pushed or a forced choice on users. It's much more organic adoption of, say, WhatsApp as almost the ubiquitous or the widely used communication mode today. So an organic growth, of course, may happen, and that's nothing can stop it, right? That's how markets are driven. But by design, it enables openness, fairness, equitable access for everyone.
Wonderful. I don't see any more questions. If I've missed any, please do point out. But if anyone else on the call is looking for some inputs from Suren, this is your time. I think we have 10 more minutes on the session. Feel free to jump in. In the meantime, Suren, where else do you see ONEST really picking up the interest and sort of expanding from the tens of the participants who are really sort of jumping at the bit right now to move forward with and start acquiring a lot more of that interest?
So I think some of the surprising requests or interest that we have seen is people who are trying to do tele-law consultation. So lawyers trying to upskill themselves, trying to learn sort of new skills or new ways to do just like telemedicine, tele-law, trying to learn through an open network like this, because there are people who train lawyers, there are people who have access to lawyers, and so them interacting through open network, right? And I think that was while we say learning and livelihood in a very loose way, and livelihood means any type of work, right? But we weren't consciously going after this, but we saw interest from such a cohort. The other one, of course, as I already mentioned, is the purple economy, organizations that deal with people with disabilities. There is interest from EV sort of mobility sector, where the mobility sector in itself is going through a disruption of the EV charging infra, the ability to have cloud-based sort of monitoring of EV infra, provisioning, all of that. How do you fix a bike with a battery and so on? So in essence, jobs are being created and disrupted. I can't say every day, but every year, right? And then maybe with AI every day. and there is something you need to learn every hour to keep yourself up to date.
Right.
And the fact that it focuses on learning and livelihood does surprise us, where things we hadn't thought of or imagined come our way in terms of, can we do learning for this people and those kind of people? I think that's always eye-opening to see who all wants to learn and grow.
Great. Actually, we have a couple more questions coming in. Okay. How can ONEST benefit outside India? And Subelu continues asking, as we have a platform for mapping occupational skills to employment in ME, which is already quite in use in India, how is something like this possible to benefit outside of India as well?
Right. It's interesting somebody's asking this question. It's, recently the Belém city in Brazil launched an open network called the Open Belém Network, which also looks at how people can get upskilled towards the vision of smart cities. And then that's again a very unique use case, right? The government is trying to do smart cities, but to do smart cities, you need skilled people. And to skill people, they need an open network. And there's certainly a natural sort of exchange that you can imagine between people who are skilled in India, getting employment in, say, a geography like Belém and Brazil, people who get skilled there at some point want to sort of come back to India, and so on and so forth. So these global networks can certainly interplay. And there has been this dialogue of India at 2047 and the skill exchange program, which has been happening more at a policy and government level, as India is becoming a rising economy, the fifth largest, the knowledge power and so on. In 2047, which is India at 100, what sort of skill exchange do you see? And I think all these networks are laying the strong foundation on which some of these can happen, sort of 20 years from now.
Wow, futuristic and exciting at the same time. Moving on, we have one more question from Sarayu, who says, while onboarding service providers, is ONEST looking at the relevance of the courses for the current and future market standards, or sort of the market demand, so to speak?
Right. So ONEST is an open network, right? So as a network facilitator, we do not have an opinion on, unless it's harmful and not kosher. We do not have an opinion on what you put on the network. Of course, in the current phase where we are working with cohorts and in a more carefully crafted journey, the question that everyone does ask is that, what's the immediate value that I will see by going live on the network? And as part of that thinking, if they feel certain courses or jobs or certain scholarships are not relevant, it's not like they do not decide to put it on the network, but just that it's a matter of being conscious that what you put out on the network may not be consumed right away, unless somebody comes on the other side to consume it. And these are all the challenges of the initial days till you get enough threshold mass on both sides. Once the transactions start flowing more fluidly, all of these challenges and hurdles get over, because then everyone starts seeing value in what's available on the network. But yeah, as honest, there is no opinion on what you put out here. It's for you to decide what you want to put out.
Perfect. And I think we're almost at the end of the session, so I'll just leave a couple of shameless plugs. Guys on the call, please do check out all the rest of the BOC talks that have happened in the past couple of months. We've had 4 of them, all of them fascinating, all of them very different. They're available on the Beckn Protocol channel. Please do join in the Beckn Open Collective, and if you are willing, please do contribute to the protocol as well. Suren, the field is yours. Please do plug, share, invite. Up to you.
Yeah, I think there is, as we also, there's ONEST network website, there's a Discord community. There is, given the sort of, overwhelming response that we have received, there is need for many more to put their hand out and contribute, help each other go live. So we are keenly looking at volunteers or people who are willing to give some time to enable others to go live, or even willing to bring a curated cohort of people who will, go live on the network. So yes, please do engage, join as a participant yourself, or help others get onto the network. Spread the word.